Alright, here it is, the video you've all been bugging me for like 2 months now. I finally made it. Well, basically I'm going to be explaining everything that I chose for all of my Paladin builds and why I chose that stuff, so if you're playing a Paladin in Mod 16, this might help you out a little bit. If you watched my livestream on Sunday, I know I said I was going to have this out on Thursday or Friday, but I decided to swap the two videos so that this would line up with the console release of Mod 16. Which means that I had to throw this together at the last minute, so I apologize if it's not the greatest. This video isn't going to be super in-depth, but it should still cover everything you need to know. I'm not claiming to be the best paladin ever, and I have no doubt that somebody else out there has a better build than me, but this video just covers everything that I personally use and what I like to use, so you can draw your own conclusions or adjust it as you see fit. If you have any specific questions or comments, you can, well, leave a comment, and I'll do my best to answer them all. So without further ado, let's do the thing with the words. Alright, so with Paladin, I have 3 builds, but 2 of them are pretty similar. I have one for tanking, one for healing, and one for soloing, but the tanking and the soloing ones are mostly the same other than a couple power changes. I'm going to start off with what I use for tanking, and then talk about what I use for soloing, and then healing will be last. So, if you're looking forward to the healing section, I'm sorry you must wait. Must be patient. So, let's start off with tank, and I'm just going to jump into the whole juice of this, because I know that's all what you guys want to know anyway, is what the powers and feats are, so that you can move on with your day. The truth is with Paladin, though, is that you can use a whole bunch of different powers that are still going to be useful. It's not like in Mod 15 where you can only use like 5 powers and then the rest of them are useless. The majority of them actually do have a use. There's just some that you'll use more often than others. So with At-Wills, I went ahead and took my Shielding Strike, which is the default. For me, you unlock it at level 71, so you do have to re-unlock it. Unless it got changed to level 72, I don't remember, but you do have to unlock it again, and it's great because it has stamina restoration. Now, the important thing to note with Paladin, especially tank, is that your shield, the amount of damage that you can block, is based on your stamina. So, stamina restoration and any sort of stamina regen that you can get is extremely important. And the amount of stamina that you have is exactly half of your maximum HP. So that is why, as a tank paladin in particular, it is important to maximize the HP that you have. You'll see that I have 600k, and that's nowhere near the maximum amount that you can have. I primarily play healer paladin, and so that's why my HP is not as high as it could be, but it's absolutely possible to have over 700k, and with using temporary buffs such as the heroism daily, it's possible to get closer to 1 million temporarily. Okay, back on topic, I was talking about Shielding Strike, and I hope you all understand now why I like Shielding Strike so much. It also has the best animation out of all of them. My secondary one is Radiant Strike. This is the exact same setup I had for Mod 15, not that I had a build video about that or anything, but this allows you to have some mobility and charge at enemies, and it's particularly useful in situations where the enemies are moving around quickly or dying quickly and you need to catch up with your group or just stay on task, basically. Now on to encounters, where you have a bunch of options. What I have selected here is basically what I use most of the time for tanking, although I do switch things up depending on the group that I have and how well we are doing and what we're facing, basically. So I start off with Sacred Weapon. Now, a lot of people do not use this when they're tanking. I do, simply because it restores stamina and gives you increased threat. And the restoring stamina part is from a feat that I have chosen down here called Sacred Shield, which causes Sacred Weapon to generate increased threat and restore stamina with every strike, blah blah blah. So it makes it pretty useful, and it lasts for 10 seconds. It also is a cooldown power, meaning you're not depleting your precious divinity in order to regain threat. A good rule of thumb, and just in general for paladins, is to only have 1 divinity spending encounter power. 2 maximum, and only for short periods of time. My secondary encounter power that I use is Smite, and Smite is basically a primary damage dealing encounter that paladins have, and so I use this in pretty much all situations. But the main reason that I have this is not for damage, it's to pair with the feat Divine Challenger. Sorry, that's a class feature. The class feature Divine Challenger, which gives Smite the added effect of placing you at the top of the threat list of the target. Threat is really important for tanking in Mod 16 if you haven't been paying attention to anything thus far, so you want to maintain threat as easily as possible. And Divine Challenger gives you a good way to do that against a single target, which is beneficial in bosses and things like that. Now, the third primary encounter power that I use is Vow of Enmity, and this is basically an AoE taunt, which is good if you're fighting groups of enemies. It does a small amount of damage, but it's a hard taunt which places yourself at the top of the threat list which is great because it makes things look at you. And you're basically, as a tank, you're the center of attention in Mod 16. You want everything to be looking at you. And if it's not, then you're not hot enough. So you gotta make yourself hotter with threat. Alright, that might have been a bad analogy, I apologize. Some other encounter powers that I have found useful is Templar's Wrath, although I don't use it as much. It does not generate temporary HP anymore, so that's something that you can just pretend never existed. It might be really difficult because that was a lot of fun, but it's not a thing anymore. Templar's Wrath just grants you increased threat. It does a bit more damage, though. However, it costs a lot of divinity, and that's why I don't use it very much. I think I've maybe used it in one situation and then just went back to Vow of Enmity because it's a cooldown power, it doesn't cost divinity, and guarantees that I'm at the top of the threat list, whereas Templar's Wrath just grants you increased threat. Okay, other powers I've used while tanking are Absolution. This, mainly, I really only used in the final boss of Lair of the Mad Mage, and I don't really use it anymore. I was really only when I was first starting out tanking it, didn't know how it worked. The stuff in there hits really, really hard, so having a decreased damage taken was helpful, though I don't really use this much anymore. I'm sure there are people out there who could get benefit from it. Now, when I'm soloing, I take Burning Light, and then Relentless Avenger, and Bane or Smite, depending on if I'm against a single target or multiple targets. Occasionally I swap out Burning Light for Sacred Weapon, just for the extra little bit of bonus damage and stamina regen if it's necessary. But for the most part, I stick with my Burning Light, Relentless Avenger, and Bane combo, and it seems to do pretty well in terms of damage. As far as dailies go, I definitely keep Divine Judgment as my primary damage-dealing daily. However, it's important to note that it's not an AoE anymore, it's just a single target, so don't be upset, or at least don't be surprised whenever you see that it's not doing massive AoE splash damage anymore, which is kind of sad, honestly. I wish they would add that back. It was nice. That's pretty much the only daily I use whenever I'm tanking, although Heroism is good to keep slotted because it increases your max HP by 20% and restores the amount increased and increases your damage dealt. So it's like a rage of sorts, but it gives you a lot of temporary HP. Like, the more HP you have, the more you'll get from this daily. Shield of Faith is pretty okay too, although I don't use it very often at all. It's not like in Mod 15 where you basically were required to spam this or you weren't a good Paladin. It's just sort of something that's there if you need a little bit of extra protection in a fight or something like that. And the last daily I'm going to point out is Radiant Charge, which is only really useful if you're trying to solo something or do damage to a group of enemies. It does decent damage, especially if it crits, but it's not going to be particularly useful against a boss. So now on to class features. I already talked about Divine Challenger that pairs with Smite to give you the nice little whole threat thingy-mabob. Yeah, that. The other one that I keep slotted all the time, regardless of which loadout I'm using, is Composure, and that causes me to regenerate Divinity 10% faster, which is, you know, always a good thing. Now, if I'm soloing something, I might switch out Divine Challenger for Blessed Wanderer, because that gives me 5% bonus damage when there's no party members nearby. And if I don't feel like heavily tanking something, I'll switch out Divine Challenger for Aura of Vengeance, which gives me a little bit of extra damage whenever I or other party members take damage. I basically use this whenever I don't need to tank something. Like if my group is super strong and they can just melt everything, I'll just put this on because I don't need to hold threat if I don't need to tank anything. Aura of Valor is also kind of okay, but other than that I really wouldn't choose any of the other class features, honestly. Now, on to feats. I already mentioned a couple of these before, but we're just going to go in order here. With Sacred Shield, I chose this one to make Sacred Weapon generate increased threat and restore stamina with every strike, because increased stamina is good and increased threat is really good whenever you're tanking. And next I chose Burning Vengeance, and this is one that I really only gets to see the light of day whenever I'm soloing something, and it causes Burning Light to do a whole bunch of damage as your remaining stamina increases. So basically it was at a damage boost, and the damage is not based on the charge duration anymore, so basically you can just tap the power and you don't have to charge it, which is really the main reason I took it, because charging it was always annoying to me. But what also happens is that whenever you're charging it, you can charge it indefinitely, and it will automatically block all attacks from the front as long as you still have stamina, so it's like a free shield basically, and then you can be like, kapow! And hit stuff, you know? Okay. Now, the middle tier here, you can really choose both, because both of them will have benefit. I just chose the bottom one because it gives you Divinity Restoration whenever you use at-wills. So basically, whenever you use an encounter power that costs Divinity, you'll get Divine Pursuit, which causes your at-wills to restore Divinity for 10 seconds, which is kind of nice. Your other option here is Justicar's Bulwark, which increases the amount of divinity that you can restore while blocking, basically. Personally, have not tried this out in an actual tanking situation, so I can't say how significantly better or worse it is than the other one. I just feel like, for me personally, the bottom one, the at-will divinity restoration, I get more benefit from than I would with this one. Now for the 4th tier, I get no benefit from either of these feats because I don't use either of these powers most of the time. I just sort of have to pick one. The options are causing Divine Protector to nullify most damage dealt to you for 6 seconds, which gives it a 3-minute cooldown on a daily, which kind of sucks. I mean, really have not seen any situation where 6 seconds of damage immunity is going to be way more beneficial for me than like some damage or like healing and 10% bonus damage. You know, I don't see it. And then the other one, if I use Shield of Faith, whenever I get healed, the party members who are also under Shield of Faith are healed for 50% of what I was healed for. Honestly, I think this one probably would be better if you're going to be using Shield of Faith, so, I mean, I've never once used Divine Protector, ever, and I've used Shield of Faith a couple times, so I probably would be better off switching to this one, honestly. And then, the last set, I chose the top one, Intimidating Presence. This causes Divine Champion to greatly increase the threat that I generate, but doesn't automatically block attacks anymore. Now, Divine Champion is your tab power, and this one makes you look like you have wings and stuff, so here, I'll demonstrate. Look at my wings! Yeah, this. And it spawns a little circle on the ground that, interestingly, lines up exactly with the Yawning portal. That's actually kind of cool. I like it. But anyway, it looks like the old Paladin Bond of Virtue circle that would spawn on the ground before, but a little bit smaller. Alright, that's it for all the juicy stuff. Now let's talk about stats for a split second. Stats for your Paladin in Mod 16 is going to be really different to what you're probably used to. You're not going to be this massive damage-dealing Paladin, super hyper-aggressive tank that you were in Mod 15. You don't have any temporary hit points, you don't have a DPS paragon, you don't have a whole lot of damage compared to the DPS paragons of DPS classes. Yes, you can still do pretty okay damage, especially if you're soloing or trying to help out friends in like an expedition or something. Your damage can still be pretty okay, but it just doesn't compare to most of the actual DPS paragons. So with that being said, you really need to focus more on defenses, specifically HP. Ideally, you want to max out all of your defensive stats. Remember, there are 4 of them: defense, deflection, critical avoidance, and awareness. And of course, I will link in the description to Reiner's spreadsheet because he has all sorts of information about stats, the caps, the updated caps, I should say, and all the sorts of companions, and, you know, he just has like this whole dictionary of Neverwinter in his head that he put on paper. A spreadsheet, you know, okay. So yeah, focus a lot on defenses, but focus heavily on HP if you're playing tank. I know I said that already, but it's good to reiterate the important stuff. Now let's talk about companion bonuses for a second. For the, whatever this is called, enhancement power, I guess, I chose the counteract one that increases your deflect because deflect is one of the hardest defensive stats to cap, so having that little bit of an extra bonus is pretty helpful. For the other companion bonuses, I went for all the ones that give me max HP for the most part. Some of these aren't fully upgraded, but the most important one is having an Energon in your 1 utility slot for bonus 32k HP. And remember, in case you didn't know, the tank paragon of Paladins get 40% bonus HP, and this applies to HP that you get from all sources. So you're going to have a lot of HP, basically. But having the Energon here is basically just like a free guild boon. So in case you're all not entirely sure what companions I have here, I have the Goat, which is not fully upgraded. It gives me hit points and deflect, hit points and critical avoidance for the Moonshade Druid, Energon, of course, with the HP, the Ion Stone of Might, which is actually what I have summoned here, that has power and deflection on it. I have this one simply for the deflection. And then the Zentarum Warlock has HP and combat advantage, and that is all of them. So why I have the Ion Stone of Might, it's an augment, and augments are the best that you can possibly get in Mod 16. Might sound weird if you're not used to it, but you can use an augment with bonding runestones. Hooray! In fact, bonding runestones are the only thing that can go in this slot now, so augments have a special enhancement power that gives you bonus stats depending on what type they are, or really just what bonus they have, and mine has hit points, deflect, and defense. It's not the best, but the HP and deflect is really what I was looking for there, since defense is extremely easy to cap. You could always pick one that has power on it, just to be like super more powerfuler. Augments also increase your maximum HP depending on what level you are. So if I were to unsummon my companion, I've got 605k HP right now. And if I dismiss my companion, I go down to 579, so that's a solid like 25k HP that I get from that, which is actually 100% of the augment's max HP. Now, I mean, that might not be exactly the number, because I do have the 40% bonus, remember, so it's probably 40% less than that, but it gives you HP, which is also important. That's really the main thing to take from this. And this companion gear, these are the 3 pieces that you get from completing the Undermountain campaign. As you work through it, you'll get these pieces, and I have all empowered runestones on there just for the bonus power, mainly because I play healer Paladin most of the time, so I try to max out my power as much as I can, basically. Okay, now on to boons. For tank Paladin, of course, you want to take all the HP boons, and then the defensive boons that you need, like awareness, critical avoidance, and deflect. I did not take the defense one because I'm already well over the cap of defense, so I don't think I need it. And then for the tier 5 ones, I have action point gain and stamina regen. I switched to stamina regen from the recharge speed. I mean, both of them are pretty good, especially if you're using mostly cooldown powers. The quick turnaround could be helpful for you. But I like stamina regen because, you know, stamina is really important, so that's why I took it. You could also go incoming healing if you're... where is it? Incoming healing if you feel like you need that. But I have not felt like I needed that on any of my characters yet. And my Master Boon, I have Bloodlust. Honestly, I don't think any of these Master Boons are particularly useful. At once upon a time, I used Focused Retaliation, but it got nerfed, so it's not that great anymore. Sadly, I mean, it's still okay. But I switched to Bloodlust because it gives me extra damage, reduces the target's awareness, and increases my action point gains, so like, I feel like those things are kind of useful. But yeah, honestly, I don't think the Master Boon matters a whole lot. Okay, now Insignia Bonuses, but we're going to take a pit stop at the Mount Equip Power, which I chose maximum HP, of course, which is on the Triceratops mount. 25k for the purple one, and 50k max HP on the legendary, and that's why they're so expensive right now. But HP on there is really useful. I switch to 10,000 power whenever I'm soloing because, you know, power is damage and stuff. Anyway, on to the Insignia Bonuses. As you can see, I don't have any legendary insignias yet because it's expensive to make them. I haven't really bothered to farm stuff for them, and to be honest, I don't think I particularly need them, other than for healing to have more power, of course. But all of my insignias are either HP or power related, except for like 2, or 1 actually. I have 1 evasion, 1 for deflection and awareness. But other than that, all of them are either fortitude, prosperity, or dominance. Remember, fortitude gives me HP defense, prosperity gives me HP, and then glory and gold gain. Really, the HP is the only thing that's important there. And then dominance, of course, is power and companion influence, which are like the best 2 stats ever. And a final pit stop on my weapon set and my artifact set, and I think that covers pretty much everything. So, for the weapon set, I have the Burnished set, and that comes from seals that you get from the Lair of the Mad Mage dungeon. Now, the reason I chose this set is specifically because of the Paladin class and what they do. Paladins are either a tank or a healer, that's their 2 paragon options, and the bonus on the Burnished set applies if you are either hit or healed for more than 15% of your max HP in a single blow. So, if you're tanking, you're going to be hit for more than 15% of your max HP, and if you're healing, you're going to be healed for more than 15% of your max HP, and both of those are going to happen very regularly. And this bonus increases your power and defense by 5% for 10 seconds, so that's why I have this. Now, for my artifact set, I can't say that I'm particularly happy with the artifact sets in Mod 16. I mean, the effects are cool, but they don't feel... it doesn't feel good as a paladin. Like, they have defensive stats on them, which is nice, but this is the only set that has Constitution on it, and remember, Constitution increases your max HP and your AP gain, so that is why I have it, that and the defensive stats, but the bonus itself is not very impressive. And the artifact is good, though, for capping out your defenses, gives you some HP, deflection, and defense. It also, if you're using this as your primary one, it gives your allies more deflection, and lowers the defenses of the enemies. So yeah, really the only reason I have it is because of the Constitution, and the strength on it increases your stamina gain. Oh, by the way, ability scores. I went full strength in Constitution. I've also seen other people do Constitution and Charisma, which is also perfectly fine, but I went with strength for the stamina regeneration, and Charisma is good for companion influence, which is good for increasing your stats and your recharge speed, so it's really up to you which one you do. But every time I say it doesn't matter a whole lot, there's going to be somebody in the comments who's going to be like, well, actually, it does. But like I said, this is really just a video about what I'm deciding to do. Next up, we have the Healing Paladin, which is what I spend most of my time doing, just because it's so good. I love it. So basically, with Mod 16, I threw Cure Wounds out the window because it costs Divinity. The heal is pretty small. You have to be targeting the person you want to heal. And, you know, it's just annoying whenever you can just spam E instead, which is my Divine Touch. Alright, for my at-wills, I have Valorous Strike and Radiant Strike again for the mobility and stuff. I mean, I would definitely be using Shielding Strike, but Shielding Strike doesn't exist in the Oathkeeper Paragon, so I had to be sad and choose Valorous instead. Now, on to the encounters. For the most part, I only use 3 encounters, and very rarely actually change something. And those are Sacred Weapon, Divine Touch, and Bond of Virtue. And this is specifically for dungeon runs. If I was doing something like an expedition or something smaller like that, having these powers, having all 3 powers that don't do damage wouldn't really be necessary and would really make you more of a liability than something beneficial to your group. But for the sake of dungeons, I use Sacred Weapon because I have a feat that gives me Divinity Regeneration for 10 seconds and reduces the damage I take. Divine Touch because Divine Touch is the best healing power that Paladins have. And then I choose Bond of Virtue, which a lot of people seem to not really get at first, at least from my experiences chatting with people in Mod 16 so far. The reason I use this is because it's basically just like an emergency button. You cast it on somebody, and then they're protected for 18 seconds. Anytime you heal somebody else, the bonded target, the person who has this mark on them, they're healed for 100% of the heal. So like if they're out of range, they'll still be healed for it. If you heal them and they have this on them, the heal that they get is doubled, which is super useful, especially in the Arcturia fight in the dungeon to keep them alive in the cocoons and stuff. If your tank is low health, healing tanks can be kind of difficult because they have so much HP if they're built properly. So instead of having to spam heals on them constantly, you can just cast Bond of Virtue on them, heal them once, it'll be doubled, heal them again, it'll be doubled, and then there should be full health, ideally. Okay, I kind of went off on a tangent there, I apologize. The only other thing I use in this paragon for the most part is Cleansing Touch, and that's only in expeditions because it removes negative conditions, which are the banes that you can get applied to you during the expeditions if you step on the thingies, you know, the thingies. Some people choose to use Circle of Power instead of Sacred Weapon, and I completely understand why. I just don't like the lack of mobility that it gives me, because the Circle of Power is very tiny and you're forced to stand inside it if you want to get the effect. Whereas Sacred Weapon, you can move around freely and attack and stuff and not have to worry about losing the effect. Circle of Power does last longer. It gives you 15% outgoing healing bonus, which is good, and restores divinity, so that's good too. It's all fine and dandy, I just personally don't like it very much. Now, for dailies, I have Divine Judgment for damage, which is necessary on occasion, and then I have Lay on Hands, which is the big heal. Alright, so one important thing that you need to know about Oathkeeper Paladin is the mechanic they have called Divine Barrier. It's listed under the Oath of Devotion here, but it's called Divine Barrier. What it does is it causes a lot of your healing spells to generate a barrier on the target, which absorbs damage based on how strong the heal was. So basically, the stronger your heal is, the more shielding you'll have on the target. And the shield, it shows up as the blue HP, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And it's possible to keep this up 100% of the time. So that, on top of the fact that Paladins have their own personal shield that they can use to keep themselves alive, means that Paladins are extremely useful and very good in a group setting, and they have a lot of utility with their shielding and stuff. Okay, back to class features. Once again, I have Composure for the 10% increased divinity regeneration, and I have this all the time. And then the other one I use most of the time is Aura of Restoration, which increases the healing received by myself and my party members by 5%, which, you know, any increased healing is good. That means more shielding, you know? There used to be a bug where if you used Aura of Life and somebody in your party died, even if they were completely, fully 100% dead, they would be resurrected with like 1 HP, and then you could heal them back to full life, and it was like magic. Clerics could do this too. But it was fixed, sadly. I don't know if it's going to be a thing in the console initial release. I feel like it's not going to be because they included all the other patches in the console release, so sadly the console players won't get to have fun with that, but that was a lot of fun to resurrect dead people. I felt like I was playing a Paladin Necromancer. Alright, now on to the last important thing. These are the feats. A couple of them are particularly important, which this critical touch one is extremely important, and I'll explain why. It gives your at-will's powers a 10% chance to give you the critical touch effect, which guarantees that your next Divine Touch, which is your big heal here, is going to crit. Now, that's all fine and dandy, and it's good just like that, but there's also a little added catch that's not listed here, and I'm still not 100% sure if it's intended or not, but you can proc it without actually hitting anything. So if you're going into a boss fight, right, you can prep before the boss fight by just spamming your at-wills, and you see critical touch activated there, and my thing's glowy, and then I can just pop a crit heal on everyone in the group and have them up to 100% max HP shielded before the fight even starts, and this takes care of any unexpected, like, burst damage when people aren't ready for it and aren't ready to dodge out of the way, and it's just really good, okay, just trust me. Next I have Prayer of Opportunity, which I think is also really good, although it gets less use than Critical Touch. But Prayer of Opportunity isn't up all the time, but whenever you activate a power, there's a small chance that you'll gain one of these prayers, and it can stack up to 3 times and lasts for 60 seconds. So this is basically whenever you channel divinity, you consume one of these prayers and you restore some bonus divinity. So this is basically like an emergency button. When I'm out of divinity or below half, I look to see if I have any stacks of this, consume 1 or 2 or all of them, and it gives me some more divinity to do more healing and shielding and stuff, which is really nice. So it's like a less critical emergency button. Now for this third one I have Enduring Spirit, and this causes Sacred Weapon to do the thing that I said before with the reducing damage taken and restoring divinity, and this is also why I use Sacred Weapon, and this other feat just really doesn't seem to do very much to me in my head. I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but basically I don't feel like it's very useful compared to this one. And now in the 4th tier, I have Divine Intervention, and this goes with the Lay on Hands daily, which is the big heal that I said earlier. And it basically just causes Lay on Hands to also have a Divine Barrier on it, along with the Encounter Power Divine Touch like that one does. Now the reason I don't choose Convalescence is just because it removes the Divine Barriers. And you also have to use Shield of Faith with it. So if you use Shield of Faith and you heal somebody and it converts all the barriers that they would get into HP recovery, which heals them for the added value instead of giving them barriers. And I mean, that could be good, but the barriers are what makes Paladins so good, so I don't like anything that gets rid of them. Just my preference. And then lastly, Emissary of Warding. This is probably the most important feat here, and you should be able to tell just by reading it. Whenever your spells generate a divine barrier, whenever they're crit, the effect of the barrier is doubled. Yep, that's right. So not only do you have this really great shielding, you can also double it and have even better shielding, which is really good. So yeah, that's what I use for Healer Paladin. Now, my companion bonuses are mostly the same. If I wanted to do the expensive route and buy all new ones, I would be using all companions that give me as much power as I can get. Really the only thing that I change is I swap out to Deep Crow, which I don't have fully upgraded, but fully upgraded is 8,000 bonus power. All the rest are the same right now, because it's too expensive to have 2 sets of companions. Now, as far as boons go, you want to take all the power ones. I took all the HP ones for the most part, just to have more survivability, and a couple of the defensive ones too to help with that. Companion Influence is also an important one that I didn't talk about when I was talking about tank, but I'm going to mention it here because it basically increases the amount of stats that you get from your companion, which means that you can get more power from your companion, and power is really, really important for healing. There's also, going back to companions for a second, there are companions that give you outgoing healing % bonuses, and those are perfectly okay too. Some people will say that those are better than power, some people will say that power is better. I don't want to get involved in that argument. I personally just like power better, so I use power. But outgoing healing, if you have those companions, they're completely fine to use, so don't feel like you shouldn't use them or anything like that. They're going to be helpful for you. Now, the master boon that I have here is Blessed Resilience, which applies heal over time, increases my max health, and heals stamina, which is nice. So I can, heal stamina. I don't know if it applies to other people or just me. I haven't tested it that much, but maybe somebody can tell me if it applies to other people, because I never bothered testing. But anyway, that's what I have chosen, but like I said before, it doesn't matter a whole lot. Now, my tier 5 ones I have Action Point Gain and Outgoing Healing, because, like I said, Outgoing Healing is pretty good to have, and I don't need stamina regeneration as much here. I don't feel like I need incoming healing bonus either. Action Point Gain is still good to use Lay on Hands if I need it. Lay on Hands is like the other emergency button. So basically, Paladin is like constant healing and then a few emergency buttons thrown in. So, or healer paladin, the stats that you want to focus on are power, crit, and then your defenses, basically. I do not have the maximum power, obviously. I don't have any buffs on. I don't have maximum rank enchantments. I don't have the power companions. It is possible to have over 200k power with everything that's going on, but whenever I am in dungeons and actually have all the foods eaten and stuff, I have around 160k, which is pretty decent, and it works out for me. I don't feel like I really need any more than that, because Paladin shielding is good enough as it is that I don't feel like I need the extra healing. That's also partly why I don't feel like I need outgoing healing as much as I would on a cleric or a warlock, for example. Okay, that went way off topic again. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. Oh, ability scores. Constitution and Wisdom is what I have here. You can also do Wisdom and Charisma if you wanted more companion influence, which would also get you more power that I don't have. Like I said, I don't have the best build in the world. I'm just sharing what I personally use and why I use it. So, more HP, more survivability, more action point gain, more dailies, you know. And then Wisdom is outgoing healing bonus, which is good for healers, because you know they heal and stuff. Okay, well, that is about everything, I think. Feel free to comment, question, or criticize anything that you think is necessary in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Maybe consider sharing this with your guild if you feel like there are paladins in your guild who need to learn how to paladin properly. I know I've already said this a couple of times, but I do just want to reiterate that I know my build's not the best and I know people have better builds than me, so don't get the impression that I'm telling you that I am the best and you must do my build or you suck at paladining, because that is not the message that I'm trying to get across here, and I definitely don't want it to seem like that. There's a lot of people out there who are smarter than I am. Okay. Thanks for watching or listening or whatever. I hope this video turned out pretty okay-ish and not terrible. I also feel like it was way longer than I originally intended, but I'll leave you with that. Thanks again, and I will see you later. Bye.